Now, we love it when you get in touch with us about topics that we should be tackling, but this message really stopped us in our tracks. And this is a mother talking. My son's last words to me on the phone 3 years ago were, "I'm not going to agree to see you until you sort out the endowment policy payout with Daddy." And then he hung up. He was 11 when he said that. God. Now, this tweet came from a Parental Alienation campaign group. And if you don't know what that is, it's described legally as when a child's hostility towards one parent is not justified and is the result of psychological manipulation by the other parent. And it often results in a parent being rejected by their child. It's truly heartbreaking, isn't it, Stacey?
Do you know what? It is really heartbreaking. I don't think there's any other way to describe it. I feel like I can really empathise with parents who split up with their partner and then are nervous about living arrangements with their children and not spending 100% of the time with their children, because we all want to be with our babies all of the time, and knowing that they're going to have another life with potentially other family members that we're not going to be a part of is a really scary thing. However, I do just think the only people that get hurt in the end are the children. Yeah. You know, if you stop a parent from seeing a child, who is that benefiting? Unless, of course, there are definitely circumstances when it is necessary. There are abuse cases, there are, you know, awful situations when it is necessary to stop a parent from seeing their child. But when it really isn't, I feel like we should be doing everything we possibly can to make sure that our children see their both parents. Mm-hmm. I think, I'm going to be really honest with you, I genuinely think it's much harder for men than it is for women. I think that the law, or at least the interpretation of the law as it stands right now, is very much geared towards the mum is innocent and the dad has to prove himself not guilty all of the time. I think you have to have a lot of money as a father to be able to go back in and out of court all of the time to see your children. And I just think the whole process is just so damaging for the children involved that I think our system's broken. I don't think it works. I think it's really, really awful, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, I mean, the Children Act of 1989, it establishes the statutory presumption that involvement of both parents in their children's lives after divorce or separation is in children's best interest. But as Stacey says there, the interpretation of that is often not that case, is it? Mm.
Well, I mean, I you know, I've been through, you know, with Mark through the years. Mark has 2 children before we got together. And the pain of not being around your child all the time is equal, just because he's a man and not a woman. I mean, literally, the agonies that he's gone through over the years. And I very much felt that the law is totally on the side of the woman. I mean, really. And there's so many things. Like, the very first thing that he hates so much is the terminology absent parent. Wow. I mean, that's such a negative way to describe somebody, because he was never absent. He was absent in that he wasn't in the same house, but he was always thinking about them, was calling them, was sending them messages and letters and all of this. And I felt very much when we then had children, and Mark had been split up for 5 years when I met him. You know, I wasn't the other woman or anything like that. But I always felt like there was this grief always with us, always is. So Christmas and birthdays would always be, I'd see him smile at our girls, but then I'd see this, like, shadow go across his face, and I knew what it was. It was the grief of the other 2 not being there. And there was almost like these shadows. They were there, but they weren't there all the time. And I just felt, oh, my God, the pain for him. And my heart goes out to any parent that can't see their child as much as they want to. It's incredibly difficult.
I mean, I have a friend who hasn't seen his children, I don't know, for something like 10 years now, and it was over nothing. And eventually it went through really long, expensive court process, and eventually he got in front of a judge who said, "You have been completely wronged and you should have been able to see your children all this time." But he said, "Now, I'm afraid the children now don't want to see you. They've become so alienated that I can't force them to see you." I mean, it was absolutely horrendous.
It's just, and we've had so many stories coming in that are just heartbreaking. just one chap here, we're not naming anybody. I haven't seen my son for 3 years. I've managed to speak to him recently, and he's told me it's easier if he doesn't speak to me, as he gets so much grief from his mum. And like Stacey said earlier, grown-ups have to be grown-ups.
Yeah.
And put it to a side and think, what impact is this going to have on my child? It doesn't matter if you want your child all the time. It doesn't matter what is important for the child, because I think the effects go on right through their life.
What about you, Judy?
I think, you know, there is, like Stacey was saying, there's circumstances where you have to kind of put your foot down and protect the child emotionally and psychologically. But I think, you know, it's so hard for fathers, definitely, and for some mums who's been in that situation and hasn't had their voice heard. But unfortunately, the system is set around, you know, men not having the best outcome, whether it's through a separation or divorce. You know, I know people that's gone through divorce, from being in that child's life every day to now you can only see them once a week and every other 2 weeks. You know, I'm not with my children's dad, and, you know, I've got sole custody, but I am very much about, look, when your dad's not together, it's not about you, it's just that we couldn't offer each other what we needed, and I try my best not to speak negatively about him to them. If he makes mistakes, they have to learn it on the way, and I make sure I'm there for them emotionally. And I think that's what we really need to take on hand. Like all of us are saying, it's the effects that it has on the children in the long term. And as well, especially for these men as well, who we're not hearing their voice, but luckily for a show like this where we speak about it, because I didn't know about the terminology of it, those men find it hard to move on. They find it hard to develop new relationships, they find it hard to have more children, and they just feel stuck. And they also are losing a lot of money, going to court and paying for it. If you haven't got...
keeps on going back to court, they should be... Because there's so many people that don't care and walk away from their children without another thought.
And also, you know, where possible, it's important to have male role models, isn't it, Stacey?
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just listening to what Judy was saying there as well about what we say to our children. I think even indirectly, to be cruel about another parent is, in my opinion, I think it's a form of child abuse.
Yes.
I watch, you know, my children's faces if they hear a remark, or, you know, if they say something to me that I know they've heard elsewhere, and I can see how painful it is for them to repeat that back to me. It's awful. Saying, you know, making them think about who they should side with, who's better, who's worse. It's just cruel. Like there has to be a line. And you know what? I'm not saying that it's not difficult, because some parents are awful. Some parents are not good parents. Not every dad is good. Not every mum is good. So sometimes you want to sit down with your kids and be like, you know what? They're rubbish, but you just can't. You have to like hold every ounce of you that wants to do that back, because the detrimental effect and the pain that it causes those children, it's just not worth it. It is just like...
Very good advice, Stace. Bit more advice here from psychologist Emma Kenny. She says the best way of dealing with potential parental alienation is to seek legal support, make time to listen to your children, be patient with your children and their feelings, avoid joining in the negativity, which is sort of what you've just said, Stacey. Counselling and mediation can help, and meditation, in fact. And remember that your child is never to blame. They are the victim and must be treated with love, compassion and understanding.